One of the most fascinating occurrences that has ever happened in popular media has to be the crossover. There's just something about different pieces of media coexisting under one universe that is just so intriguing. But with a crossover comes one very important question. How would it actually work? Why would these characters meet up? Where would they meet up? What would the overall story be? This is an especially prominent question when it comes to video game crossovers, which also need to take gameplay into account along the story and the universe. Will the gameplay be mostly based on one particular game, or will the gameplay be a hybrid of all parties? Maybe the crossover will contain entirely different gameplay altogether. Questions like these filled my mind when I encountered Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright, a crossover of the titular franchises. As one who's played games of both franchises at this point, I decided to try my hand at this game to see what a crossover game is all about. Now, before I start looking into the game, I just want to say that, while I am a massive fan of Ace Attorney and played every one of their games, I have only finished the first 2 Professor Layton games, and I'm not a fan of the series. Wait, before you send me to the gallows, this does not mean I think Professor Layton is a bad series. Quite the contrary. I think these games are amazing. They're just not my cup of tea. My cup of Oasis berry tea, that is. I just want to clarify to show my overall opinions on both franchises. I will try to be as fair to the game as possible and avoid putting any of my biases in this review. This is also spoiler free, so if you want to play this game yourself, this could be a good guide for you. Before we get into anything else, one minor thing I'd like to note about the game is that it has a couple of Easter eggs, such as the appearance of Inspector Chemley and the Blue Badger. I know this is kind of meaningless to talk about, but it does show that the people who made this game know their audience well. Usually in crossover games like this, the crossover is just a cash grab whose main selling point is that the 2 characters are together and not much comes of it. These small Easter eggs show that the creators are very familiar with both franchises, and will be more likely to portray both accurately. Then again, Shuji Kumi, the creator of Ace Attorney, is working on this crossover, so I highly doubt that things would be portrayed inaccurately, at least on the Ace Attorney side of things. One other aspect that I'd like to talk about is the art style of the characters. They're either too Layton-y or too Wright-y, without a solid blend of both. I know it's quite hard to blend 2 distinct art styles together, and that isn't really a flaw for this game. It would have been super cool because it would have emphasized the fact that the worlds of Layton and Wright are one in Labyrinthia. That being said, the spiritual successor to this game, the Great Ace Attorney, did a much better job at blending the 2 styles together, so I feel like my point of the game no longer matters. Okay, so how do Phoenix Wright and Layton meet? Well, in London, our pals Layton, Luke, Wright, and Maya each get trapped inside the magical world of Labyrinthia, a place that seems to actually contain real magic. However, with real magic comes real witches who get prosecuted and executed in witch trials. Our heroes not only have to stop the witch trials, but also find out the truth about this mysterious town. As you can see from this premise, the story is a lot more like a Layton adventure than a Phoenix Wright one, complete with its own fantastical Layton tier twist at the end. Despite this, I feel like Wright and Maya got plenty of chances to shine, and not once have I felt like they were neglected. The story also makes sure that the witch trials are integral to the plot, which really helps solidify Wright and Maya's importance. Something that surprised me in the story is that there were multiple twists that genuinely caught me off guard. For a crossover game like this, I expected the story to be predictable through and through, especially with a smaller cast of characters this time around, so for the game to surprise me like this is very commendable. One of the biggest selling points when it comes to a crossover game like this is to see our favorite characters interact with each other, and this game delivers perfectly. All 4 of our main characters act exactly as they should, and not once have they been out of character. However, there are more characters than just our main 4, so how are they? Well, there's the new character Espella, who's basically our token Layton girl sidekick. There's Prosecutor Barnum, who somehow managed to beat Naota in the world's blandest prosecutor contest. And there's the various side characters you meet along the way that turn into witnesses in the trial sections. These guys are like a mix between the goofy witnesses in Ace Attorney and the citizens of the Laytonverse, though they're leaning a bit to the latter. While most of them lack the depth of certain other witnesses, these guys are still really fun. There's a few witnesses who actually have quite the saddening tale to them, but they aren't as deep as the other Ace Attorney witnesses that fill their role. Despite the story of the game oozing with Layton, the Layton-like gameplay is very lacking. They feel more like a tech demo than the actual Layton experience. In the original games, puzzles were in every nook and cranny. If you clicked on practically anything, a puzzle was sure to pop up. Now, puzzles only show up once every blue moon. They're typically easier than usual. It's not 999 easy, but the change in difficulty is noticeable. Even worse is that the game now tells you exactly where the hint coins are. The entire point of finding hint coins is that it encourages players to click on various objects, and since puzzles also hide among these objects, there's a certain risk factor to the whole process. Removing this aspect misses the entire point of the pursuit of the hint coins to begin with, and only just makes already easy puzzles easier. Admittedly, there were a few puzzles that threw me for a loop, but they were a lot rarer than usual, especially with the overall increased rarity of puzzles in general. If there's one thing that the puzzles do differently that I actually like, is that they are a lot more story-focused than the original games, which are mostly unrelated save for a few special cases. It actually feels like the puzzles are naturally occurring obstacles that Layton has to use his wits to overcome, rather than Layton being a sadomasochist who forces the poor player to solve dozens of grueling puzzles for his own selfish pleasure rather than actually solving the mystery at large. Can you tell I don't like this game? On the flip side, while the Layton gameplay feels like it was stripped away of all the meat from the original, the Ace Attorney side of gameplay is not only completely spot on, it also enhances the gameplay from the original by adding many unique features. This is the first Ace Attorney game in the series to feature multiple witnesses at a time, which can lead to some interesting dynamics that couldn't have been done otherwise. Sometimes, one witness says something peculiar and another one reacts to it, which you can further press on to see what's up. You can also contradict a witness's testimony with another testimony. These updates are so refreshing that Takumi actually added them into his spin-off series, The Great Ace Attorney. There's also the use of the Grimoire, and having to use magic as evidence to contradict statements was very fun and interesting. However, there were some parts, especially in the final case, where it was a lot more difficult than other trials I've played. For example, sometimes I have to press the same witness twice, and for some reason, I tried presenting a piece of evidence on a specific witness testimony, but got penalized. But then I presented the exact same evidence on the exact same testimony and it worked. Even to this day, I still don't know what I did to make it work. Fortunately, the hint coins can be used in the trial segments, making the difficulty spike more balanced, and playing it becomes a lot less frustrating than what it could have been. It's funny how the hint coins tend to be most often used in the other franchise of this crossover game. I knew that analyzing a crossover game like this would be very interesting, and after looking at it myself, it was more than just that. Having to think about how the two franchises would interact not only story-wise, but gameplay-wise led to a lot of interesting and unique results. What we got out of Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright was the charm of Layton's story combined with the Ace Attorney's humor and gameplay, while also having its own flares to it, whether it be for better or for worse. This is an absolute must-play for Ace Attorney fans, and while I am a bit more hesitant to recommend to Professor Layton fans, if you don't mind the easy difficulty, I'm sure you'll enjoy it too, as it has the characters and story you will love. Although it isn't as deep as some other Ace Attorney stories, it's still a fun treat that will please fans of both games. I'm gonna give this game a 7.5 out of 10, and I'll see you later. Make sure to like the video and subscribe if you liked it, and goodbye! Bye!